It's Money Monday, where we unpack books that can help you master money, build wealth, or rethink your relationship with finance and economics. Hey there, Marmy here. I've got a question for you. Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right in life, but it still feels like you're stuck on a treadmill? Like you're hustling, getting promoted, maybe even saving a bit, but the freedom you imagined somehow never shows up? That's exactly what today's book pokes at, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki. It's not a how-to manual for getting rich overnight, but more like a collection of reframes. It's about how you think, how you react, and how you build your relationship with money from the inside out. And just so you're not swimming through all this solo, I've put together a mind map that you'll see on screen while we talk. Helps to keep the ideas from tangling into yarn. All right, let's get into it. Kiyosaki grew up with two dads, one biological, one borrowed. His actual dad was super educated, had a steady government job, and believed in working hard, saving, and climbing the ladder. That's the poor dad. Meanwhile, his best friend's dad, the rich dad, had very little formal education, but owned businesses, invested smartly, and seemed to think 5 moves ahead. These two men gave Robert wildly different advice about money. And it turns out that tension between the two voices, security versus strategy, stability versus freedom, is something a lot of us are still wrestling with. It's familiar, right? That little voice telling you to save responsibly, and the other whispering, start something, own something, build something. Now, what really set Rich Dad apart wasn't his income, it was his mindset. He didn't just earn money, he used money like a tool, like a chess piece. He taught Robert early on, don't work for money, let money work for you. Okay, pause. Let that idea breathe for a second. Not working for money. Sounds dreamy, but it also sounds like the kind of thing only rich people say. So Rich Dad did something kind of brilliant. He gave young Robert and his friend Mike jobs at one of his convenience stores. 10 cents an hour, boring, repetitive work. Eventually, Robert got frustrated and asked for more. Rich Dad's response? He took the pay away entirely. Cruel? Maybe, but it forced them to notice what most people ignore. The emotional roller coaster that money puts us on. Fear, frustration, hope, resentment. The way most people get stuck in the rat race, working jobs they don't love, to buy things they don't need, trying to soothe that stress with short bursts of pleasure. It's like chasing your tail and calling it progress. Rich Dad wanted them to see that cycle from the outside. And once they did, the next step was learning how to break it. Not with a lottery ticket or a Silicon Valley startup, with literacy, financial literacy. And this is where the book gets really chewy, in the best way. So, you know how we're taught to read, write, and do algebra, but nobody really teaches us how money flows, or how to read a financial statement the way you'd read a novel with tension, subtext, character development. Kiyosaki says the real game is understanding the difference between assets and liabilities. And not in an accounting class kind of way, but in a everyday, will this thing quietly drain me or quietly build me up kind of way. An asset? It puts money in your pocket. A liability? It takes money out. Simple. Not always easy. Take your house, for example. Poor Dad insisted their family home was their greatest asset. Rich Dad disagreed, because even if it appreciates in value, it also demands constant payments, taxes, maintenance, insurance. That's money flowing out. And when you multiply that mindset, thinking your car, your vacation, your new couch are investments, you end up with a life full of pretty things and no freedom. So Rich Dad teaches, don't just work for a paycheck. Build up assets. Own things that pay you back. Rental properties, stocks, intellectual property, side hustles that scale. That's the real flex. And here's where it gets a little sneaky smart. Rich people don't just earn differently, they spend differently. They pay themselves first,
not last. They protect their wealth using tools that most of us never even consider, like corporations. And this part really blew my fuzzy little mind. See, a regular employee earns money, pays taxes, and then spends what's left. A corporation earns, spends on business-related things, and then pays taxes on the remainder. That means business dinners, travel, even a car lease could be paid with pre-tax dollars, if done legally and smartly. And Rich Dad knew those rules. It's not about cheating, it's about knowing the game you're playing. So, let's pause again. Right now, we've got 3 big shifts already on the table. Don't let emotions run your money life, understand assets versus liabilities, and use the rules of the system to your advantage, not out of greed, but out of awareness. Now, here's where things go from practical to philosophical. Rich Dad believed that money is essentially an illusion. It's not backed by anything concrete, it's based on belief, agreements, confidence. So the people who succeed are the ones who learn how to create money, not counterfeit it, obviously, but invent value, spot deals, tie up opportunities, resell, get creative. One story that stuck with me, Kiyosaki found a foreclosed house in Phoenix during a market dip, used a tiny amount of capital to secure it, found a buyer, and essentially created $40,000 out of 5 hours of smart work. Not because he was a genius, but because he'd trained his brain to look. That's what Rich Dad meant when he said, "The rich invent money." It's a skill, and it's learnable. And here's where the twist comes. The goal isn't to become an expert in one thing. It's to become useful in many. Robert talks about learning sales, marketing, communication, skills he wasn't naturally drawn to, because being too specialized can make you dependent, vulnerable. Instead, the wide skill set makes you nimble. There's a woman he met, a journalist with a master's degree, who was frustrated she wasn't earning more. She hated the idea of sales, thought it was beneath her. But Rich Dad said she was one skill away from wealth, one pivot, one layer of learning. And that hit me hard. Because how often do we let pride or fear stop us from adding that one new tool to our kit? And speaking of fear, yep, we're going there. Because even financially literate, clever people still get stuck. Why? Internal blocks. Fear of losing money, fear of being wrong, fear of looking silly. Kiyosaki says the difference between winners and losers isn't knowledge, it's resilience. Winners learn from losses, losers get crushed by them. He also talks about laziness, but not the Netflix kind, the kind that looks like busyness. Always doing, never pausing to ask, what do I actually want? And that simple shift from I can't afford this to how can I afford this turns a dead end into a doorway. So where does this all lead? To choice. Rich Dad's final lesson is that financial freedom isn't a mystery. It's a series of choices, small ones stacked over time. Choose to learn, choose to act, choose to hang out with people who are building cool stuff, choose to read the boring tax code, choose the unglamorous thing now that pays off later. And that's what makes this book so sneakily powerful. It's not about getting rich fast. It's about choosing how you see the world. And when you shift your lens, you shift your life. Okay, let's take a breath. That was a lot of yarn to unravel. So here's a soft little recap to roll around in. We've explored how emotions drive our financial lives, unless we pause and notice, how real literacy starts with understanding the flow of money, how assets and liabilities are often disguised, how tax laws and business tools aren't just for the rich, and how resilience, curiosity, and action are what actually move the needle. It's not just about earning more, it's about becoming someone who can handle more. Want to take this further? You can download today's mind map and episode summary for free. Links down below. Also, if you want to read the full thing, I've got an Amazon affiliate link in the description. Thanks for being here with me today. Remember, you're allowed to design a life where money works for you. Marmy out.